there, I'm Dalton Reer. I'm a Master Principal Solution Architect here at Qlik. This video concludes my series on how Qlik can interact with your Snowflake agents. This one is intended for the hardcore techies out there, you know, the geeks, the nerds, the dorks, or the poor chaps who just got tapped on the shoulder and told they need to implement this, and they're not any of those things. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to actually build what you've seen in the previous two videos. In my show you how it works video, I demonstrated for you the piece parts of Cortex agents in action via Snowflake intelligence directly. Then I blew your mind with the ways that it interacted from within Qlik Sense itself. If you haven't already watched that video, I really encourage you to do that because you really need that 30,000 foot view, because today we're diving deep into code, like deep into a lot of code. And without an overall understanding of how it works, you just might not come up for air. But don't worry though, I've watched enough of those deep technical videos where they try to install a gajillion lines of code and nuanced technical material, and then you're left rewinding it 100 times, crawling onto your desk, squinting at the screen for that one line of code that you need, and you're screaming for help. Okay, I'm old. Maybe I'm the only one crawling on my desk squinting at the screen, but you get the idea. But don't worry, my friends, I'm not going to leave you like that. I've prepared all the resources you need with great detail. Here's the links that you're going to need that I'm going to show you these. I'm going to walk through these resources, but you can screenshot this, and now you've got those things hopefully in big enough letters that you'll be able to recreate those links and get going with those. All right, let's quit delaying this nonsense and get going. So in my last demo, I was able to walk through, ask questions, press this button, and bam, magic just started happening. And you were left wondering, how does that really work? Well, let's dig into this. All right, that button, when you push this thing, does two different actions. The first one is that it sets a variable called vCurrentSelection, and the formula that it uses is replace, replace, and if you know anything about Qlik, you know that all that's doing is replacing things. And I call get current selections. That's pretty much it. Get current selections will go grab the block, field name values, and all I'm doing here is replacing the carriage return line feeds. So this is essentially just saying, go tell me everything that somebody in this application has filtered to. And the second action that this takes is it does a reload, but it's only doing a partial reload. If you understand Qlik, you know that when you can load the script and it's going to go get all the data, all of these beautiful records here that you see, right? 59 million medications, 64 million encounters, etc. And so we can load that data, and that'll take a little bit of time. When I do a partial reload, it's different. It's saying, whoa, 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 whoa. I need you to leave all of this intact. It's this that I want to reload. So that's called a partial reload. So the video that I've created for that, and again, this was in the help links, it walks you through what happens when you push this button. What code do you need to have in place? So when that calls the reload, I'm going to walk you through that code. And so what ends up happening is it comes into the application and says, okay, blah, 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 blah. And then there's an if is partial reload. I check for false, and this is my full reload. So when I do my full reload, the press the load data, it's going to run this block of code. Now you'll notice I've got a whole bunch of variables here because I need to clear things out when I start fresh. So that who are our top 10 frequent flyers, that is going to appear there just as a suggested question. I could just as easily in that code make that blank. Please put your question here and ask, right? So there's several videos or several variables. We're going to get into those variables in a minute. It's just the idea that if you need variables, in your partial reloads, you probably want to set those ahead of time to make sure that everything's cleared out before you get going. So when it comes in here and then it says, hey, whoa, it's else, that means this is my partial reload. And now we're going to go play with some other variables. Before I get into these, though, I want you to understand the crux of the matter. We're basically going to be calling a connection to go connect to a Cortex agent REST connector. And so I'm going to make this call down here to this REST connector. And you notice that I've got with connection because that's part of what I have to do. So how do I create a connection that allows me to do this REST connection? Well, gosh, I wish I would have created a Qlik community post that shows you exactly how to call that REST API connection. And wow, it would have been sure nice if I wrote all of this out for you and actually used that same synth agent that I used in my demo video for you. So that you would understand that. Oh, look at that. In this particular one, I use the question, who are the top 10 providers? Well, what I do is I walk through, how would I do this, right? How would I call this thing? Well, I let you know that they've got an API, and I give you the link for that. So in here, unlike my video, you are able to click into this and see what their API is. And they basically give you a post syntax. They say, blah, 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 give me your database, blah, 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 give me your schema, blah, 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 give me the name of your agent. And so here I said, hey, in my database, it's Snowflake Intelligent, my schema is agent, and the synth agent is the one that I want to run. And so then I walk you through. All you're going to do in code is say, I want to create a new data connection, and you just do it like this. And you would pick the REST connector. Let me scroll down. We got so many connectors to so many things because it's so wonderful. So I would pick the REST connector. I paste that post in there. It's that easy. I want to pick the post method. As soon as you click that post method, you're going to get a chance to post in the body. Well, it'd be nice if I were to just go ahead and give you that body. That's the sample. And so this is a sample of how I would call for that question. If you build an agent in Snowflake, I would just take that agent and just start crawling, right? Don't worry about building it in code. Try to just do this REST connector the first time straight where you pass it a question, see if you can get some information. Well, there's a few parameters that you would need, like response type. This is important, and I'm going to talk about this for a second. You need to have this response type that is text event stream. Usually when you call a REST connector, you're passing a question. So if I call OpenAI or Google Gemini or Anthropic or anybody, I pass it a question, you get a result back. It's a one-for-one, question, result, question, result, question, result. You get the idea. This is a pass the question in, and I want you to give me your entire chain of thought, right? That's kind of the big deal about these LLMs these days when we're calling agents, right? I want your chain of thought because I want to know what you were thinking, how you did it. You started to do this and then it didn't work. And then you said, nope, I found a different way. Nope, that didn't work either. I found a better way. And so that response type is important because that is exactly what these Cortex agents return to you. You go through some authorization parameters, no big deal here. Here's others. You're going to give it your bearer token, and that token you're going to create in your Snowflake user interface for your user ID. So you're going to get an API token. That token is what's going to go into there. You need to give it a few more parameters, no big deal. And then I wish there was a box that would say, enable dynamic parameters. I want my script variables to go with this connection. I want runtime parameter overrides, right? I don't want to use that question forever. I want to be able to change that. I want to do something different. There is no box like that. So when you're in here, If you pick this REST connector, I can assure you, if you scroll down here, you are not going to see any of those boxes, but you will see this with allow connection. That with allow connection, if you were to test this, and when I walk through this, you'll get the idea. What that allows you to do is change things on the fly. You can change any part of that connection on the fly, including the URL if you wanted. So if you wanted to take what I'm going to show you and hand you and kick it up to the next level, you could provide a query that would go out and list your Cortex agents. They provide that. If you look at that API that they give you, and you went out to this link, you will find out that they actually give you an API call that'll let you list all of the agents that are available to you. And so that's a neat thing. Well, I could actually change the URL and let the user pick the agent that they want to ask a question of. It could be that dynamic, folks. Well, the thing that I'm actually going to change is obviously I'm going to change the body of it. I want to pass something different. Now, when I say that it's an event stream, what I mean is that it's going to keep returning things, right? These are all going to come back to you one by one. And then I walk through the rest of this. So I just wanted to kind of get you into this and help you understand. I'm going to walk you through this in very, very good detail, step by step by step. So I'm not going to worry about that so much anymore. But the idea is that I can pass that body on the fly. Now, what do I want to pass on the fly? Well, on my screen, I showed you, I set a variable called the current selections. So I know I want to do something with that. And I want to pass it the question. So what I end up doing is I build my body that I'm going to pass. Same thing that I showed you in that community post. Here's the thing. Oh, wait. I want a new execution plan. Because if I've already rerun this, I don't want you to use a cache. So if I've run this, but this could be live data constantly streaming through here, right? I could be asking about information that's constantly streaming into Snowflake, being refreshed. Don't use a cache. Go get me a new execution plan. So the new execution plan is true here. And then I say, hey, here's the question to ask. And criteria. Well, what's my criteria? Well, I must have a variable up here where I build the criteria. And the criteria is when the data matches the following conditions, and then I simply $expand the current selections. So whatever that current selection was from the screen, I $expand that into a command here that says, hey, when the data matches these conditions. And that's how I pass those filters, folks. Now, here's the other interesting thing, just to help you have the greatest chance for perfect success. When I first started asking questions, of course, I was just crawling. So I would ask, what are the top 10? What are the top 6? And it would give me a chart, right? Because it's, hey, here's IDs, here's numbers, here's IDs, here's numbers. And so I wrote a whole bunch of code to specifically parse what comes back from Snowflake. And I wrote it for that chart because it gave you a particular type of JSON. Well, then I started asking more complicated questions. And it did not give me a chart result back. It gave me a table back. And we'll walk through that in a second. But the table was basically, hey, here's a whole bunch of information, the details. In my video, I showed you, wait, it gave me a whole lot more details behind the scenes than I had asked for. So if I clear this again, I'll remind you what that looks like, where it would give me this instead. And I'm just building the chart based on what the details are that are coming back. But it gave me a whole lot more information that just wasn't fit for a chart. Well, you can actually command it to do that, right? That's part of my prompt. I don't want to talk about prompt engineering and make you fear that there's a whole lot of heated discussion about that online of what a real prompt engineering is and how, what's important and what's not. All I'm saying is that there's times where you want to kind of push it and nudge it to be consistent. Even if you're giving me 2 columns, put it into a table format. If you're giving me 10 columns, I want it in a table format. So that just kind of pushed it in the way, and that was it. So I basically changed the body so that I could, when I made the call, it would pass that information for me. Then I start getting into pulling these things apart. What I needed to do was go get each and every one of those events that I showed you, right? I went through every single one of these things, and what you'll end up seeing in here is that I pull these, and what I say is, hey, you know what? Only give me the record, the event, where the previous event was response, because that's where my result data is. Now, if you end up wanting to display for your end users the entire chain of thought, you'll simply pull all those in. You won't skip the other 600 rows that Snowflake is going to return to you. You'll bring them all back. All right, so that gets started. Well, now there's a whole lot more code in here, right? One of the things that I do is I say, hey, I want you to take this and store it into a QVD file. Well, the reason I did this was because this is a lot of JSON. Now I've got it perfected, and I'm going to hand that perfected code to you. But at first, it wasn't perfected because nobody was handing it to me. This is leading edge stuff, right? This stuff just came out. So I stored it into a QVD file so that I could have a different application that would go pull that. Well, in my other post that I shared with you on how to call that agent API, this one was about how to build the connector. This one's how to call it. I actually give you a QVF that says, hey, I want you to parse that stream out for me and see if I can get the right values from their stream. And I give you the QVD. So I asked a question. I'm going to give you the initial QVD that I had for my starting question for that. And then I'll come back to this in a second. In this post on calling the agent or API, I kind of skip through, hey, blah, blah, blah. In my other post, I'll help you build your connector. Now let's start with that connector. And so now I'm picking up where that other post left off with, hey, I got this event stream. What do I want to do with this thing? And we're going to start rolling down through here. And again, I go through, hey, here's how I call that with, I'm going to pass the body. And then what do I want to do with that? And so this is the point where I've stored that in my code. And now I'm saying, hey, here's what you're going to need to do. You download that QVD that I gave you. You download that QVF that I gave you. And you'll be able to, in that QVF, load that QVD that I just handed you. So you just got to move that up to your data files and you're ready to go. Because then you can continue to play and learn the JSON a little bit better. So hopefully that'll help. Again, it's going to go through all that. You're going to see in the code where you pull this out. And so this code is a step-by-step. I'm going to suggest to you, hey, comment this out so that when you first do this, you'll notice this is one giant bad block of JSON code. And well, golly, that's not really friendly, right? But Qlik can parse that very easily. One of the things I'm gonna recommend to you is that this is going to point to yet another post that I've created called Taming the Wild JSON Data Frontier. This post you may need for anything, even if you don't end up getting into the Snowflake Cortex agent. You're going to want to look at this post because in this post, what I'll give you is another application. This application actually has everything in sections that are inline. So I'm going to hand you blocks of JSON code like this, and I walk through the different types of JSON. Hey, it's just flat JSON, field value, field value, field value, field value. And oh, golly, then I'm going to point you at a post specifically helping you pull out flat JSON. Oh, shoot, you got, oh my goodness, the JSON you're dealing with from a Snowflake column is a nested JSON. I've got a sheriff object and it has name, field value, field value. Oh my goodness, it's got another object called office, and that's a block of JSON, so it's nested. Well, just click this link and it's going to take you to my post on how to pull out nested JSON. Oh my goodness, no, oh my god, oh wow, I can't believe it. The system that was sticking data into Snowflake for me ended up creating arrays of homogeneous objects. It's saloons. The saloons all have names, owners, and capacity. Name, owner, capacity, name, owner, capacity. How do I pull that out? Well, I just click on this link and I go get it. Oh no. Oh wow, I can't believe this. I need to find an easier job because now I got a bunch of mixed objects. Type text, ooh, type bounty and criminal, type message. Oh no, what am I going to do? Oh, I'm going to click that link and I'm going to walk through it, right? Not too complicated. Uh-oh, I got heterogeneous mixed arrays. So I've got an array that has these mixed messages. Ooh, I got an array that has structured arrays where, and this is really where we get into what we're going to get back with a table. It's going to give you a result set that has the values and then the definition of what those values are for. Now, why the big difference here, folks? Why don't I want to just report it with standard JSON? Right? Well, kind of the same reason that we have relational database management systems in the first place. If I'm only passing a single record, this is the way to do it, right? Like, why I got field value, field value, field value. But if I could be returning hundreds or thousands, why would I want to keep saying sheriff's badge over and over and have to pass that across the internet? Total bullets used, pass that across the internet, right? 100 times, 1,000 times. So they went to this is called JSON version 2, where they made it more compressed for you. Hey, let me just pass you the column values and then I'll give you the column names. And this is what happens when in our code we were saying, give us a table. This is exactly the way I want it because I wanted it defined so that if they were giving me 10 columns or 20 columns, and if I was getting a whole lot more rows back, it was a whole lot faster to be able to parse it this way. Now, one of the things I want you to think about when I look at this way, and I see these values like that, if you're familiar with Qlik, you're used to the concept of an inline table, where I simply have a column header that has sheriff badge, comma, total bullets used. And then below that is a row of data that says 1307919, comma, 3221, 1617792, comma, 2690. Does that make sense? Hopefully it does, because that's kind of the approach that I ended up taking in my code. So I passed that out there. I stored that. You've got these resources that are going to help you, especially this one is going to help you look at that code, right? And deal with it in that way. Because the other thing that I'm going to mention is when I give you this giant block here, you're going to want to parse that out. There's a system called JSONformatter.org, or it's a website, not a system. You just pass it in this big ugly JSON that's all really flat, and it'll help you line that up and make it prettier for you. I call it prettified. Well, what I did was my block that I ended up pulling out, I go ahead and put that through there for you, and I give you that pretty version so that you could read it. So as you're calling, whether it's the Cortex agent or anything else, you want to be able to see it pretty fine so that you can understand the structure of the code. So I do that. Then I walk through and I say, hey, let me go start getting this content. One of the things that I would recommend as you're running something like this is that you then comment out everything else afterwards, right? So that the only thing you're doing is pulling the content out. And so I walk through and I say, hey, I'm looking for the tool result. And then I'm looking for the text field. And I walk you through in that Taming the Wild JSON Frontier how to call this JSON get function. It's basically hand me something, tell me what the index is that you're trying to pull out of here. Well, when I walk through the arrays, I'm going to talk about the iter number function. If you're not familiar with Qlik, this is super cool. This is saying, I just want you to iterate through something, right? Because I don't know whether Snowflake is giving me 1, 6, 100, right? Because my questions could vary. I could be asking about different sets of data. I just don't know what that end user's thinking. And so I can't predefine 5. I don't want to limit anybody. Well, I'm going to give you the first 5 results, and then after that, you're on your own, chump. Like, we don't want to do that. So I can simply use a while function, and I say, hey, go get the next iteration number, go get the next iteration number, go get the next iteration number. And as long as that is a valid JSON block of code, I want to use it. And during my loop, then I'm going to pull that out and get that content from that. So I'm not going to walk through each of these necessarily, but those things are in that, hey, what do I do when I call the Snowflake's Cortex agent so that you can understand those? And I will walk through those there. Part of this could be more streamlined, it could be more performant, but I wanted it to be readable by you and understandable by you, right? I wanted you to get, let's do one piece at a time so that it's easy to understand. Oh, I can see what this gives me now. Now let me look. And so what you'll end up seeing is a lot of these things. I'm going to build the response block, right? If I were to look, hey, what is the last result? What was the last result? And I can see here's that tool result where I got the tool results, right? And it gives me the data and what these things are. So here's where my values are. Oh, boy, I've got a whole bunch of values because it gave me way more columns than I had expected. And I can pull things out, including one of the neat things that's in that block of code when they give you that to you is they'll give you how many rows of data are there, right? It tells me right there. So all I have to do is ask for it. Tell me how many rows there are to read. When I'm looking at this, it says, hey, here's my results metadata that, excuse me, that is my header, right? So I go read that thing and I pull out what my row type JSON is and I get my headers. I know what the name is for the agent. I know what the result status is. I know what the result type is. That's all in my response. So if I go back to here, you'll see, oh, yep, I've got 10 rows to read. No, I must have asked for the top 10 frequent flyers. Here's my result data headers. I know that I'm dealing with patient IDs. I know that I'm dealing with first names, last names, etc., etc., etc. I know that the SQL used was this because it hands it to me as part of that result. I know that the agent that was called was Synth Healthcare. It was successful. And this was what it used to create that value for me. The last text value in there, in this case, there was no, that was this, that while specific human formulation wasn't found, blah, 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 because that was from a different question. So now I need to go down and parse these things. And I'm going to set a variable for what my headers were, how many rows I had to read. And now I want to go get my field values. Again, I'm going to use an iteration function for my JSON and go pull them. So however many there were, I'll get those names, right? I know how many rows of values. I don't know how many names. I can iterate through and get the field name and the field type out of there, right? And so now I know what I'm dealing with in terms of that. I know how many fields there, how many rows there are. So I'm going to pull that out, and I'm just going to use a for loop to walk from one field to the next. As I'm pulling out the headers, you notice here I'm saying, hey, go get these guys. Where do I put the fields? If it's the first field, I want to put that header, I want to create this Cortex header as that first field. If it is not the first field, then I need to do the field name and a comma afterwards. As I'm pulling the values, I'm going to do the same thing. Hey, go get the first row of data, and I need to make sure what I do with that. And if it's not the first row of data, I need to do what I need to do with that. As I'm pulling that out from these field values, so if I were to look at these things, I don't want these brackets, right? Those things interfere with my inline command. So I parse that out. I don't need these double quotes around there. So I parse those out. That's all I'm basically doing there is saying get rid of the brackets, get rid of the comma, or get rid of the double quotes. And then look at that. I build this table by simply doing that. So if I look at my Cortex values, hey, look at that. I've got my header row that gives me patient ID, first name, last name, number of encounters, distinct months, first encounter, last encounter, blah, 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 and then the values. Pretty easy in terms of an algorithm, right? Go parse this. The only hard part here for you, if you've been doing Qlik for any number of days or years, probably most of you, if you're digging this deep, the rest of this is easy stuff, all common. It's just a matter of how did I need to parse that JSON, which is why I've given you these things. I want to walk you through when it gives you this giant ugly stream, how do you parse that out? And what do you do for these things? So how do I parse out a structured array? Ooh, let me just click that link. And guess what? I'm going to show you, here's my example. Here's how you call the function. And when you walk through this, here's what you're going to try to build. And voila. Once I've built these tables, folks, guess what? Like I showed you in my demo video, every one of those tables is then out there in memory. And so now, let me zoom in on this. If I look at that patient ID, bam, that guy's linked to everything else. Do I need all of these other tables to stay in memory? No. I would drop them. But when I'm doing a demonstration video or trying to help somebody learn, I sure want you to see what got built. Here were my field value pairs. Here was my last result row. Here's what the content was. So even when I said I want to get that last record, it is a nested JSON with an array of values. There's tool results, thinkings, tool use, tool result, thinking, text, table, text, right? And so just row after row of an array that I had to parse. I want to parse out what was in that response. I want to hang on to what that first JSON was with that one row. And here's where you notice, ooh, gosh, even when I pull the 557th row, it is an array of JSON. Because when you think about it, what the Cortex agent is doing is pretty complicated. You might be asking, give me the top this, count this, do this, give me a sum. But you could be asking for several really complicated things that are variable. It is building this all dynamically. Now, if you haven't used JSON before, this should be a great concept for you. Think of how flexible this is. Because if I build a solution to say, go get me the top 5 rows, I could create just a simple field value table, this result set. But if I needed 7 columns, I'd have to create a different table. And then I need a different table for 10. and then I would need some type of a link table if I'm going to have multiple rows. And then right, and we've created multiple tables like these to store all of this, where JSON could literally encapsulate all of that. It really is a relational database system that's dynamic, just encapsulated. Then all you have to do is parse it. That's kind of the future. As we're looking at how every part of an ecosystem fits together and needs to communicate with each other via a message, that's how it's done, right? And so you need to get up to speed with that. And the great news is I'm going to walk you through in multiple posts how you tame that wild JSON data frontier. And this is just the starting point. So there's no reason I wouldn't need to do this for a whole lot of things in the future. You will need to be able to understand how to do that. The great news is it's all documented. I just had to start with it somewhere to help you. And I have no choice but to introduce JSON to you and how to parse it for these Cortex agents. Well, I understand that this was kind of complicated. This was a little bit longer video than I would like to have made for you, but I hope you also understand you can go out to here and get the rest of the information. Go watch this on Do a Partial Reload so that you understand how I call things. One of the things that I should have mentioned to you in the code here, let me go back to my code. I did want to show you one more thing as part of that partial reload. The key part of a partial reload is when you're loading the data, you always need to say replace load. It's a replace load. So that I walk you through that in my video, I'll give you the examples. Even when you have preceding loads, I need to do a replace here, I need to do a replace here. So even in places where I'm going to show you that I'm loading multiple times, it's always replace load as part of the partial. And in your full loads, when you do those things, you're going to be you can just load it normally, or you can even use the word add. But you don't have to use the word add. You do have to use the word replace. That was the last extra thing. Hope that this was helpful. Hopefully that list of resources for you gets you to where you need to go, and you can dig through this. You probably should expect to probably spend a day coming up to speed with this. Again, that day is going to get magnified for you. Once you understand how to parse the JSON code, you're going to be using this all the time for applications. I've got an awful lot of Snowflake tables with different data where the columns contain the JSON, right? They don't even break it out because it's just much faster to store kind of as a blob of data that way, because it could be variable. It might be field value pairs. Tomorrow it might be an array. And so each column, you're going to need to understand, how do I parse that out? It's not just for this, but you definitely need it for this. Hope that you have a great day.